Sounds like you're gonna actually learn something.
Every time that music.
So anybody have a money market account?
What's that?
Probably not yet. But remember when we talked about interest rates? And we just kind of went over our checking account, right? The interest rate for our checking account, except for Donald, because he gets this cool thing where he gets his money back or something. No, you don't, Donald. I don't know. You must be working with the mob or something.
Well, here's the thing, so I have a Kasasa account that I have savings. And if I have like 10 transactions,
Okay.
then I can get like an extra interest.
That is not.
That's not how it
That's-
works. Shoot, I'm making all the interest in
Because
10 plus
my
transactions.
cousin, he makes an extra.
I understand what you're saying, but
$36.
yeah, okay. I understand what you're saying now. The way you said it the first time, You're-
It's the money that he paid back.
yeah.
Yeah. Like you paid like $10 on like gas and you got it back. So what do you think?
Yeah, you
Like
did.
every time you.
So I understand what you're saying now, and that's true because at American Bank that happens too.
Yeah.
So he's saying if you sign up for a certain kind of checking account and you do certain things, which you probably have to have like direct deposit and you have to use your account so many times, you get a higher percentage, and that's totally true. Yes.
Shoot,
Okay.
I'd be like, ooh, 5%. I make all these transactions.
So did Eric at the one place. They hate him.
These,
Anyway,
they love me, but.
so today we're going to talk about a money market account or a certificate of a deposit account, which is called a CD. So a CD is not what you guys are thinking of. CD is not something you listen to music on. This is basically just a different version of a savings account. So a money market account, a CD, are specialized savings accounts that are special because their interest rates are higher. So for instance, instead of your saving or your checking account, which you might get 0.5%, now you might actually get into whole numbers. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal to you, but right now, if you can find some kind of savings account that you're getting 2 or 3%, sign up for it. Because right now, what Donald's actually talking about, we got something in the mail through American Bank the other day that said they can't sustain that percentage anymore. So they actually dropped that percentage because of all the COVID things and not being sure about where the money's going to go and that kind of thing. So yes, I was getting the same thing, 2 or 3%, and now they knocked it down a little bit. But in this case, these are just special savings accounts. But the kicker is that you basically have to keep your money into that account and you can't touch it. So like if you would need money and you plan on using the money that you have there, you would want to put it into a checking account. Because if you put it into one of these accounts and you then needed that money out, you would have to pay a penalty every single time that you took that money out. That's what's bad about these, I guess, okay? So, CDs, another name for it is a time deposit or a savings certificate. So if you see any of those in the assignment or the quiz or the test, they mean the same thing. And they have special rules. And some of the special rules is you have to have a minimum deposit. So you have to start out, and your principal, you'd have to have enough money to either hit one of those things, or when you're going to put in money, you'd have to do it at a certain allotment. Or you might only be able to put in so much per year, okay, without it getting taxed. Now that's another nice thing about some of these things. You can continue to put money in there and use it as income, but you don't have to pay taxes on it until you use it at the end. So another way of saying this could be mom and dad, grandpa and grandma could have started you a one of these and you don't even know about it. And in the back of their minds, they were going to use this or have you use it for college sometime. So this could be something that you're coming into that you don't even know about. And then you could basically cash that or continue to put money into it and build it for your retirement. But you could use it as your way to go to college. Okay, so in some cases, you might have to have a minimum deposit, and it's usually one of those increments, $5,000, $1,000, $5,000, or $10,000. And then you have to keep your money in there, in that specific account for a certain term. And it's a minimum amount of time. So again, this is kind of how you sign up for which one you want. You would go to your bank and say, I actually did this a couple summers ago. Jacob Nemmer's dad helped me with this. He put me into a CD that said it was only going to be a 2-year deal, but it was a really, really good interest rate. It gave me like 6% or something like that. So keeping my money in there for 2 months, I made blah, blah, blah amount of money, but I was assured, or I assured him that I wouldn't have to use that money at all. So, no offense to some of you guys at your age, and I was in the same boat, I probably couldn't have done this at your age because I didn't have enough money kind of set aside where I could just put $1,000, $10,000, whatever it happens to be, into this account where I knew I wasn't going to need that money, but I got a great interest rate on it, and there's no way in 2 years that I could have made that amount of money if it sat in any other account. So your banker would know about these kind of special deals. And like I said, some of them might be in months. I think, like I said, mine was 2 years. 5 years is a really common one. And then when you get to the end of the term, it's called the maturity date. And that would be how much did you make during that process. As soon as you get to your maturity date, then you can take your money out and not pay a fine or a penalty. If you take it out beforehand, then you have to pay some sort of penalty. Okay? So the kicker is, again, you really want to make sure that you would have that certain amount of money that you're not depending on. It's totally extra right now. And that's what you would use for these kind of accounts. Make sense? But if you would go through and make this maturity date and you would actually need that money and want to take it out earlier, you can still take it out, but you're going to pay a penalty on it. It's probably like a month's worth of interest or 3 months worth of interest, or it would be set in like a contract before you would actually do this, and so you would know about how much you would pay off. Okay. But to figure out all these, you're going to go back and use simple interest. What was our simple interest formula? The I equals PRT thing, right? So again, remember about the number of periods. Some of these, when you get into the months, when you do your time, you're going to take the number of months and put it over 12 instead of if it's a yearly thing, okay? So money markets, kind of the same thing, but a little bit more, I guess, flexible, maybe you would say. But they still have specific rules or special rules. And in a money market, you would have a minimum balance. So you could only make it go down so much. But there's a fixed interest rate. That's good for us, especially in times like this. You know how much you're going to make. It's not going to vary from month to month or even year to year. It's just at a fixed level, okay? And then they would give you, again, in your contract or whatever, they would tell you how many times you could withdraw from this account without paying a penalty. So this is probably like 2 or 3 times per year that you could withdraw from this amount or this account. And you wouldn't pay a penalty like we just talked about. Okay? When we do interest in this, it could be simple interest again. So at the end of the term, it could be compounded interest. So remember, when we do compounded interest, we either do it multiple times, meaning we figure out our interest and then you have to add it back to your principal and then do it again. Or you use those tables that we used, remember? And then you use that special decimal that you would have gotten from the chart and you would have multiplied it through there, okay? What's interesting about these is that some of the rates may fluctuate here, meaning it could go up and down. And we'll go through that example here in just a little bit. So then they go through and talk about penalties on CDs in the book. And again, this is when if you would take money out of your CD, so you thought you needed, or you thought you had $10,000 set aside, then all of a sudden you got in a car accident and you needed a car. So you could go through and you could go out and get that money, but there's going to be penalties, and it's usually assessed by the months of interest. So for a 1-year CD, to get money out of there, you would have to pay a penalty of 3 months interest. So again, it could be depending on how much money you have in there. If you only have $500 in there, your 3 months of interest probably isn't that big of a deal. If you have $100,000 in there, then it's probably a big deal. Okay, so you just got to keep that amount or in mind. The penalty is calculated on the money that is withdrawn from the account. So again, if you had $10,000 in a CD and you wanted $5,000, you would pay the penalty on the $5,000, not on the total amount that was in the CD, just on the amount that you want taken out. Okay? Here's the kicker. If you knew that you needed $5,000, you would have to ask your banker to do the math to take out extra, because the penalty is going to be deducted from the amount that you withdrew. So if you knew that you needed $5,000 to do that car repair, and you took out $5,000, they're going to take their money, which is the penalty, from that $5,000. So you're only going to end up with, I'm just throwing a number out there, $4,700. So if you literally needed $5,000, you would actually have to tell them that you want to withdraw $5,300. So when they take their penalty money, it gets back to the $5,000. That makes sense what I'm saying? Okay? So that's kind of the kicker, and you got to just be really careful there. And then we're going to go through and we're going to look at some savings, or comparing between the savings accounts. Again, don't get mesmerized by the rate. The rate might not always be the best rate, even though it's the biggest number. So again, remember, if it's multiple periods, you have to take your interest rate, because the interest rate that they give you is always yearly, and you might have to break it down into those certain periods. But again, we'll go over some of those. So don't just look at numbers there. You got to think about it a little bit. And then the last thing that they talk about is the effective rate of interest. The effective rate of interest means, well, what are you actually getting? So even though Donald's told that he's getting 2.7% for his checking account, and I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out there again, he could go through and actually figure out exactly what he's going to get for that percent. It's probably not 2.7. It might be 2.6765 or something, and they just round it up to 2.7 because it sounds better and looks better. Okay? So the effective rate, again, if you ever see the effective rate, when they're talking about a rate, you know that you need a percentage. If I'm going to do a percentage, you always want to make sure that it is, this is key right here, the amount of interest earned in a year divided by the amount of money on deposit. So again, the amount of interest in a year might not actually be what you are calculating or what you need for your answer of the problem, but you have to have that to do the calculation of the effective rate. And again, we'll show you all this in a couple of other examples. Okay? So go ahead and write down what you want there, and then we'll go back and talk about some examples. So any questions in general about those two things? If not, we're on 109, I think I said. Sorry, 110. So on page 110, the first thing we're looking at is just kind of basic ones. So read through A here. So in letter A, it says, Rose deposited $10,000 in a 3-year certificate of deposit, so a CD, that pays simple interest at a fixed annual rate of 5.4%. What total interest will Rose have earned at the end of the 3 years? Okay, so what are we gonna do?
Take 10,000 times 0.01.
Times what?
3,
Aye.
because it's a 3.
Exactly right. So again, we are doing this. Quick review, I is my what? The amount of interest, P, which means the amount that we started with, right? R always has a percent, which we turn into a decimal, and then T is time. My rate is always an annual rate. So if it's a period thing, then we have to break it down a little bit. So this one should be pretty simple, right? As Easton said, what was the number again?
10,000
10,000,
times
0.054 times 3, right? Because it said the total interest, right? If they asked you for interest in 1 year, then I would just change this to 1. But because it says total interest, I'm gonna do the 3. What'd you get, Kevin?
1620.
1620.
So what if they say like months?
If they do months, then we would take this and we turn it into
Fractions?
something over 12. Yep, we'll show you one of those in just a second. So, is this a good deal? Pretty good percent right now. Really good percent right now. So again, if you had $10,000 and somebody said they're going to give you 5% for 3 years, if you couldn't touch this and you could afford it, you make $1,600 in 3 years. Not a bad deal, right? Now, it doesn't sound like an awful lot of money, maybe to some of you, but you're not doing anything to it, right? And it's safe. You know, people can't take that from you. Okay? And this is probably a fixed rate. So even if we have bad times in that second year, you're probably still getting this rate. That's what's really nice about CDs. Okay? Letter B. Alex had $2,000 on deposit for March and April in a money market. So here's your monthly one, Tiff. Interest in the account is paid monthly. In March, the account paid 3.5% annual interest. In April, an annual interest rate of 3.75% was paid. So again, notice, the first one was a CD, this one is a money market. Money market, the account or the percentages can change month to month, as you can see here. Alex had no other deposits or withdrawals from the account. What total interest did Alex earn for the 2 months?
You have to take the percent divided by 12.
This one, you don't have to do that yet. No. Because you're gonna do that by manipulating the time on that one, or on this one.
Okay.
So in B, we're still gonna do I equals, what was my P for the first one?
2,000.
$2,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was my rate?
Wait, but does that mean you have to do it twice because one?
Exactly.
5,
And then this would be what?
it'd be 112.
1/12. Right? Why is it 1/12 and not 1? Because remember, this is usually for years, but we're only talking about 1 month. So 1 out of 12. How much you get here? How much?
Oh, no. I was way ahead.
Should be 6 something.
5.83. Wait,
I can live with that. It's really small.
I don't know if I did that right. Yeah.
Now, do the same thing. I equals 2,000 again, times.
Do you not add the interest?
0, 3, 7.
You don't have to know.
0.
Huh?
Because I don't think it was compounded interest, was it? No. So if it was compounded, then you would add it back to the 2,000.
Wait, what?
But this is just simple interest in 2 different months. Okay? What was this?
0.375.
And then 112. What do you get for that? 6.25? So if I add the two together,
You have yourself include $13.
$12.08.
$12. Let's go.
So, here's the thing. Don't get discouraged, but why is it so much less? Well, 1, look at my principal. And then 2, look at the percentages, right?
In the time.
And the time. So this is 3 years. If we would have done this, if we would have done basically this rate, $6 times, what? 12, 20, 36 months, it still probably wouldn't be as much as that, but it'd get closer at least. Yes, sir.
What's better, a money market or a CD?
Well, again, you gotta think about, this money in a money market is more available to you. This is still available to you, but you're gonna pay pretty hefty prices if you have to use that money.
Well, like,
So I'm saying if you had, if somebody gave you money right now,
let's say you don't need to touch it at all, like you don't need it at all.
then I would put it in this one.
You put it in,
Because you're gonna get a really good rate with CDs. But you're gonna probably do, this one would be more long-term. Okay? This or an IRA would be more long-term. And it's more accessible to you again, if you would happen to need it. If you know that you're never going to need this money, then I would keep putting them in special CDs.
What are they like doing for like a CD? What are they doing with that money? Like, why do you do that?
Because they want to make sure that they can use your $10,000 for 3 specific years and you're never going to use it. So that's why they're going to give you a higher percent, because they're going to be assured that they can use your $10,000 for everybody else and you're never going to ask for it back in that 3 years. That's why these are smaller, because you might actually ask for some of this $2,000. That makes sense? So the more that you would ask for it, the lower this is going to be.
Yeah.
The less that you're going to ask for it, the more this is going to be, the percentage-wise. Because they know that they can use your money then. Because either way, in this one right there, they're going to give it then, if this is your money, they're going to give it to Molly for 6%. So when she borrows it, they're going to say this is 6%, so they're automatically making 2.5% on Molly because of your money. That's how banks work. The bank doesn't have that much money.
Yeah.
The bank's using all of our money to give it to other people. But then they're paying us. They're basically renting our money for us at this rate. But at the same time, then, the bank's making their money because this is going to be doubled for them, for you to borrow. And we'll get into the borrowing phase down the line.
What happened after,
Well, it's middleman.
what happened after like the 3 years?
This is a great question right here. Now, so what happens after this? You got to be careful. So, if you are planning on just doing this for 3 years, you really need to know when your maturity date is. Because let's just say it's July 14th. And you totally forget that you even have that money in there because you don't need it. But then if you don't say yes or no to that, or say close my account out, they'll automatically roll it over into a new one. But then,
So it'll be another 3 years.
yeah, you're stuck in that 3 years, but this percent might not necessarily be that same percent. So the next one they roll you into, it might not be as good, but now you're stuck for 3 years, but now they trapped you and only gave you 2%.
oh,
You know what I'm saying?
You have like.
So you gotta be really careful about when, and you would get a contract like thing to show you that, but you just gotta make sure that you remember that. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, when I did this, totally forgot that I even had the money in there. So I got screwed in a sense the second time. Because they rolled me right over into a new one, and I got less percentage. And they say, oh, it's pretty much the same thing. It's not.
But isn't it exciting when you find out, oh, I have like $10,000 I forgot about?
Well, I guess.
I'd be excited.
But see, like,
But you're still getting interest on it.
yeah, but the bad thing is,
Use it for 3 more years.
even
Yeah, but
the
like,
CDs
oh.
nowadays, this was, if you could do this right now, I would do this all the time. Because even the CDs right now are only like barely over 2%. So if you do the math then with 2%,
It's still something.
you're right, it's still something.
Okay, that's kinda stupid, because the 3 years, and what if you land like a Sunday, your contract goes out?
Well, yeah,
They're closed on Sunday.
no, but they would adjust that. They would adjust that.
I don't the difference between money market and a CD.
Again, it's just the availability of the money. So like, these are both savings accounts, but I could get into this $2,000 a lot easier than I could this. So when it's in a CD, it's kind of basically trapped there. For
So the
the,
CD, you don't touch it, but the money market, you can.
you can in both, you're gonna pay a big penalty for this one.
But the other one, you don't have to pay a penalty.
There might be, but it'd be real, see, like, if it's 1 month's worth, you're only paying
So it's just
$5.
kind of like a checking account or savings account.
Perfect, it's exactly the same thing. It's just, these are more special than a regular savings account because you're not going to probably use this money as often. And so they're gonna give you a bigger rate. So like your regular savings account, instead of 3.5%, you might get 1.2%. So you can have your savings account, but you would take some of that money always and flush it into your checking account when you run out, right? You wouldn't use either of those for that purpose. So if you had one of these or both of these, you would still have a savings account and you would still have a checking account. So these are just special ones.
So like, do you have like only like one specific?
Oh, sorry.
date?
Sorry, I forgot. Go ahead.
So do you only have like one specific day you can take it out?
No. You can take it out whenever you want. We're just
Yeah,
gonna.
but like, to not go over the 3 years.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they would tell you, I think you get a 30-day leeway, one way or the other, so that's your
Oh,
Sunday.
that's,
Yeah. I think it's 30 days or something.
Screw it, it's Sunday.
Mr. Macklem?
Alright. So you got like a 5-year CD.
Uh-huh.
Can you like take like more than one CD out? Like say like you.
Oh, yeah.
A CD
Sure.
for 1 year, a CD for 1 year, then you wait, and you take out another 5 year. So then like you have your one of your 5 years is up, and then you just got like CDs rolling through every year. You're just getting interest. You're making money just on CDs.
Well, but you have to have that money to buy that CD.
Well, yeah. Like,
But yeah.
Say, yeah, like you have that money, you don't need to touch it, like
Yes, so you could have, you're saying to have a 5-year, but you start this one at,
Yeah.
so this one would be at 4 years when that one was up. Yeah, you could do that and keep rolling it over, but you gotta have enough money to live on, you know? You could.
Would there really be a point in that, bro?
No.
Because you could just put all that into the big-
Well, yeah, you would probably, then they would probably have, instead of a $10,000 one, then you would find something, if you knew that you could put it into something in one of these denominations. So, there might be, the next one might be $25,000. So, and then if you can assure yourself and the bank that you can put that $25,000 in for 3 years and you're never gonna get it, you're probably gonna get 7 or 8 or 9%. So, anytime the bank can get your money for a longer period of time, they'll do it for you and give you a better rate. Yes.
In number B, if you know how you can take money out in number, I guess, type thing. Yeah,
Hold up. Shh. Say it one more time.
you know how you can like take your money out.
Yep.
I guess like more often than you can in that first one. Would your interest change then? Like if you take money out?
No, but then you're probably just gonna go down in this because this will.
I know it is.
So you would basically say, well, I'm gonna take $500 out of there, now it's $1,500, but this would stay the same and this would stay the same, so this would end up going down, because your amount's gonna go down.
Question.
kind of stupid, but it's legit. So, say you put in like $1 million and put it into like, I don't know, 50 to 100 years. But then your kid can take it out and die.
It's called a
Yes.
trust fund.
Good?
I wouldn't say you probably wanna do that in a CD, you would do that in an IRA or something.
Are we
Let's
done?
be
Can
real.
you put the homework
Have
up
that
while
one
we
of
lost
those.
the options?
I wanna calculate that out, $20 at like 6% for 100 years.
Well, you're probably not gonna get, 6% interest for $20. No offense.
They can take it out.
Go over to C. So now we're gonna look at your penalties. Okay? Neil has $2,000 in a 1-year time deposit account that pays an annual interest rate of 2%. Neil cashed out the CD early. The bank charged Neil 3 months simple interest for early withdrawal. What penalty did he pay? So again now, right off the bat, do you think this is gonna be a big number? Well, if you would look at it in general, would you say that he's gonna be making a lot of money in interest for 1 year? So let's see, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do I equals PRT again, right? And what'd you come up with for your I equals PRT?
I equal.
What numbers did you put in here?
2,000
2,000
times 22.
times what?
1?
Times 1.
So not
Add it.
100.
This is how much?
40.
40? Okay. And what did they say?
3 months.
They did 3 months. So, 3 months, this would turn into what? So now do your calculation again, and do 3 12s.
That's the interest, that's just what equal, that's penalty.
Anybody do it?
What's the?
I got 10
Oh,
dollars.
that's what I got too.
Interest in 3 months.
I don't think I
Yeah.
had any words.
Yeah,
I didn't think I did it right either.
that's what I
You
thought.
also multiply that together in 1 year and just divide by 4.
Divided by 4.
So I like charged him.
So did you hear what Tragan said?
I did divided by.
Tragan said, can I just do this? And get my $40? And then I know that it's 4 quarters, right? So each quarter should have been divided by 4 to get my $10. So you can do it that way too,
But it's harder to do it.
right?
Yeah.
Just keep going.
So if the fractions confuse you, then just do it for a year and then figure out what you would need. Okay, so D, Noel's 5-year savings certificate pays an annual interest rate of 4.7%. At the end of the first year, she cashed out the $12,000 CD and paid a penalty of 12 months simple interest. What penalty did she pay? So, here, before you do the calculation, you think this is going to be quite a bit?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
it's
look at our first one up there, right?
Yeah.
We did $10,000 for 5.4%, okay? This one is 4.7%. So the percentages are relatively close, and we had a little bit more principal. So if we would have done this one right here, divided by 3, we would have relatively had about what? 500 and some dollars, right? So basically, we can kind of guesstimate that this one should be around $500 too, right? Now, what'd you come up with?
12,000 times 0.047 divided by.
How much? But now, don't do 2,820 because that's for what? That's for all 5 years. But we only want what?
Wait, what?
1 year.
We only want 1 year.
564 big ones.
$564, right?
Wait, wait.
So again, what was the amount? 12,000? What was the next number? Or the percentage?
0.47.
4.7? So this is what we would have originally done. And so here, I would have just put a 1 there. If you put a 5 here, that's fine. That would have been your total over those 5 years. But the interest penalty was 1 year. So I'm just gonna put a 1 there. So you could have done it for 5 and then divided by 5, or just put a 1 in there. Okay? That makes sense to everybody?
That's it?
That's it, yeah, so that's your answer. What was it, 5 something?
564, I think, something like that.
Okay?
So it's not,
Right,
oh no, it's 12 divided by 12.
right, because it was 1 year. This said that it was quarterly,
Oh god.
so that's 3 months. This said that it was 1 year. So you gotta just read the prompt. Where are we at? That was B. Turn page.
John?
For 100 years.
Oh.
You only get 100
Got a lot.
Are we getting an assignment today?
I don't know, maybe now. Larry, that's a trade. A 6-month time deposit account pays 5.35 simple interest. So right there, what's your time?
6 months.
So you're gonna use what? 6 over 12 or 1/2, right?
Yeah.
Okay? Dora has already calculated that she could earn $10.54 in 6 months on $1,400 deposited in a savings account, earning 1.5% daily interest. How much more interest could Dora earn if she deposited the $1,400 in the time deposit account instead of a savings account for 6 months? So, what are we gonna do?
1,400 times 0.0535 times 20.
Perfect. Everybody hear what he kind of said?
I did.
What was it,
I was
principal?
1,400,
Did you get a haircut?
Percentage?
0.0535.
Time? 1/2, right? Or 6 over 12, or 0.5. All of that will work. Punch it in there and we get what?
37.45.
Say it one more time.
37.45.
Now, what was the question asked?
minus 1054.
Minus $10.54. Why?
The ones know how much more.
How much more, right? So this is what I could have got. This is what we got in the other one. So we'll come back and finish, and then you can work on the assignment tomorrow.
That's not even that much money. I don't even know.
Hey.
Yeah.
You don't understand what?